Ukrainian flags. Things that give me life is white liberals asking dumb questions. So instead of taking the train like we usually do, my husband and I picked up our daughter today and we decided to take a bus. And on a bus, there was this elderly couple, clearly liberal because they were bitching about Trump. And as we're going through the village, I see a lot of Ukrainian flags. So I say to my husband, wow, there's a lot of Ukrainian flags here. There's a lot of them in this area. And he's like, yeah, yeah. So the white old lady next to me goes, oh, you're from Ukraine? I go, no, I'm not from Ukraine. I'm from Central Asia. And she goes, from where? I'm like, Uzbekistan. So she's like, North Asia? I'm like, Central Asia. She's like, where is that? I'm like, well, you know, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan. I'm like, all the stands, basically. We are Asian. They are Muslim countries. But we also speak Russian, and we kind of look Russian-ish with Asian eyes and cheekbones. So she goes, so what's up with Ukraine? And I was like, well, considering that I was south of both countries, for a fact, I know that Ukraine started it. I mean, I watched them do it. And she goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you don't know that about Donbass? There was an 8-year attack on Russian speakers on the neutral zone, which Putin mentioned that he was going to go to war about if they don't stop. I'm like, they had an agreement to never expand NATO eastward, which they broke. I'm like, so to me, it's quite obvious that Ukraine started it. The lady was dumbfounded, but I kept going. I'm like, you know, I'm like, in my country, Americans actually tried to stage a coup, but it didn't work because we asked Russians for help. Since you guys fund the Taliban and all, and we got a terrorist attack in Uzbekistan, which they came and stabbed a bunch of people. In fact, Karimov, our president, our dictator, had to beg Putin on his knees to come and help him, which he did. They shot him all in the stomach, and we got rid of the Taliban. Now they're actually really strict about not even traveling with the Quran because, yes, there are peaceful Muslim countries who don't want extremism. Surprise, surprise. Because the only people who want extremism are CIA. So anyways, I could see she's getting uncomfortable, so I keep going. And I kept going. I was like, not to mention, I'm like, my grandma was a Holocaust survivor, and my grandfather was already here, and he went back because of the segregation. He was in the gulags, and then Asia, and that's how he met my grandma. She's like, oh, really? I'm like, yep. So history repeats itself, and I'm glad they're not here to see it, because whatever you're seeing on the news is not true. I'm like, and to somebody who lived below both countries, it's really the same thing. I'm like, NATO is just communism 2.0, and I don't know how Americans don't see it. The lady was left speechless. And this is a cautionary tale for you people to mind your fucking business, because you never know what experience other people have. And before you call somebody a dictator, if you think Trump is a dictator, maybe you should consider people's opinions that actually lived under a dictator. Like, I've lived under a dictator, and you calling Trump a dictator is fucking silly to me. Okay, but you know, they say that you should listen to a black person's experience because it's their true experience. So how come you're not listening to a person who lived under a dictator and who lived who was born in communism and lived in post-war communism? How come you don't want to hear our opinion? How come you don't want to hear our experience and why we are MAGA? And what I left her with was that I said that CIA funds too many coups around the world, and this has got to stop. And then we were talking about Russia, and she was like, yeah, but you know, Russia. I'm like, I get a lot of hate for just looking Russian, even though I'm not from Russia. And she's like, yeah, but that's always. So she excused hate towards Russians like it's normal. And I told her, I'm like, that's not normal. I'm like, you think it's okay for me to be bullied because I look Russian? She was quiet. And then I told her, I'm like, you know, this has been going on since Cold War. She's like, yeah, but it'll always be like that. You know, we don't hate Russians like that. And I was like, yeah, but they taught you to duck and cover. I'm like, and look at you, you're still careful of Russians. She had no answer for me. I don't think anyone has ever spoken to her like that. Her husband remained silent, so was mine. It was really funny to watch them just stare at each other. But don't go around asking people dumb questions if you don't want to hear an answer that you're not going to particularly like. I also left her with the fact that NATO, especially France, are going after African colonies, which Russians have been decolonizing. And so I really hope she goes home and Googles that. But her husband seemed like a really angry man who was mad that you have to call in Social Security to update it. And he was like, revolution, revolution, another white beta male. Okay, there's a very specific type that hates Trump, and they're white beta males. And the Russians call it the women, you don't know what's on their mind. Like, they are dark forest. I call them dark forest because they look like they're smiling, they look like they're friendly, but they're the type that will call the cops on you behind your back. That's the type I'm talking about. So Malcolm X actually said a long time ago, he was like, the most dangerous animal in America is the white liberal. You guys should really go over the things that he said and why he died. Okay, and just go through all the CIA coups that we've done all over the world. Maybe then you're gonna care, but I doubt it, because liberalism is narcissism, and all liberals are narcissists. They only care about their ego and identity politics. They don't care about anyone's experience or anyone's bills or how we're gonna feed our family. They only give a shit about cute Ukrainians and freedom, whatever. But you know what? They're the first commies that will put you in a fucking concentration camp if they win another election. And they will find an excuse for it to make it okay. Same way they find an excuse to bomb all these other countries and say, well, that was for our democracy. Meanwhile, they're actually there to steal resources. Okay, I think I went on for too long. Anyways, guys, this was my fruitful bus ride. I love taking buses and pissing off liberals.
I still believe in the West.